All right. Welcome to the Strive Summit podcast. I'm your host, Alex Hanna, and with me today, I had David Whetstone. But before we get into that, huge shout out and thank you to TopCon Solution Store, Jordan over here at the booth, Dave and Joe, allowing me to use the space to do so. Dave, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell them what you do, what you're about, and kind of a little bit about you.
Choosing to have this conversation with myself and Alpha Infinity. I'm dating myself here, but I started in this industry about 3-some decades ago in the petrochemical industry. I saw a lot of inefficiencies, fire watch on site, stick building things on site, need emergency shutdown and following the piping and instrumentation documents and not knowing what valve to shut off to stop the fires. Plethora of issues over the 30 years. Grew into AutoCAD, doing 2D plans, sections, human interpolation, human error, and all that stuff. Even got into the 3D, doing a lot of fabrication for contractors so that they can spool it and develop it off-site, fabricate it off-site and install it. Then with the inception of Revit coming into our industry, we now are at the point where, we're modeling everything, plan and spec, right, with high LOD, ITM parts and pieces, wet side and dry side. We also have an extensive, RFA electrical catalog that we use not just for conduits, bends, and kick 90s and things like that, but also for all the supports, all of your unistrut, all of your channel steel, all of that stuff. So everything is high-level parametric parts. We can do pricing off of it. We have all the pricing in there. We have all of the materials in there. So you can schedule any parameter needed for estimation or any 4D, 5D implementation.
Awesome. So where are you located right now in the U.S.?
So actually, we're all over the country. I'm personally on the East Coast.
Home base.
In the Philadelphia area. So we're domiciled. Our company is domiciled out of New Hampshire.
Awesome.
But we have, I have staff in Texas. I have staff in California, and Washington, and Florida, Kansas, obviously New Hampshire, Philadelphia area. So that actually is very unique and opportunistic when it comes to leveraging the scan-to-BIM side of our company. We basically have staff that are trained with Leica products to be able to go out there and reality capture, register the sites. A lot of times we use that for coordinating maybe retrofit spaces where you don't want to model everything or don't need to model everything. Also for digital twins, for historical preservations, things of that nature, facilities management. I mean, there's so many ROIs in reference to scan-to-BIM technology, and I really feel like it hasn't been implemented enough in our industry. I mean, this stuff is 10 years old. Revit's 20-some years old. And it's just ripe in the industry to really take hold and be able to develop those, those ROIs to our customers.
Awesome. That's going to leave my other question. So what technologies or stuff are you using today or that you're excited to use in the future with Alpha Infinity?
There's unique to our service that we provide. We have clients that have various technology debts. Some are still married to the old 2D AutoCAD way of doing things, and we try to usher them into a 3D spatial space coordination authoring environment. And then, we have some that are still coordinating in Bluebeam Studio on 2D PDFs, and we're trying to usher them into Revitso or something that can add some knowledge and some autonomy to what they're trying to do and get done, especially when you have a large build with multiple trades working all at the same time and multiple central models, and they're all syncing back to one NWF in Navisworks. You want to do that strategically. You want to kind of begin with the end in mind.
So what are you excited about? What is stuff that you see that blows your mind?
I'm excited about the AI. I'm excited about the benefits that can be had by machine learning. We're working on scripts where, not necessarily scripts, eventually there'll be macros and programs and APIs, but from a script standpoint for proof of concept, where we can just go out and scan it and load the database with the structural steel required, I-beams, W-shapes, whatever, and then have it model it autonomously. And then 85% of it's done. You're just going in there and fine-tuning it and making sure that it's connected correctly and things like that. And then you go out there and you scan it again, and then you're working on an additional trade. You're dealing with slope plumbing, and you're doing the same practice. And the beauty of that is after you get through all of your 7 trades and you work yourself from the slab, through the steel, through the slope plumbing, through the ductwork hydronic, and all the way down to your lights and top hats, you have your as-built complete.
So AI has been talked about a lot in the industry, especially now at Autodesk at AU and stuff. So are you worried that Terminator is going to be a documentary and we're all going to live and Skynet's going to take over?
Probably off topic, but in that regard, I was a little concerned when I saw Tesla release some of those robots they did last week.
Yep.
In reference to AI taking away our jobs, I think it's going to make us better at our jobs.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of work that we do that necessarily isn't tapping into our highest skill sets.
Okay.
So that's 60%, 50% of our time is spent doing mundane tasks that we can clearly teach a computer how to do.
Right.
And that's something that we really gravitate to at Alpha Infinity. There's so many gaps and that have to be bridged in the softwares that we currently use, whether it's coordination software, whether it's authoring software. A lot of this stuff hasn't been developed to the point that it should be. So we have to kind of build those bridges, not only for our internal teams, but for a lot of our clients. Maybe they have a technology debt where they haven't trained their staff correctly, or they haven't upgraded their hardware,
right.
or they haven't adjusted their workflows to be best practice. And we can kind of come up with I don't want to say a Band-Aid, but we can come up with a fix where we can correct that problem and they can see that ROI within a month. Right. Instead of having to have that investment over 12 months to really see that ROI.
So like for me, AI has been, it's been crucial for Strive, especially the podcast. I'm a one-man show at the moment. It's been fantastic. But I always say please and thank you at the end.
Yep.
Whenever I'm using ChatGPT.
Yep.
Because I don't know. One day it might ask me some questions, and I'm like, oh, I didn't prompt this. What's going on?
Yeah.
So I try to be polite about it and stuff. But yeah, AI is definitely taking control of some construction stuff, especially like you said, automations, a lot of integrations and stuff. Not having to think about it, no hard coding, just AI is taking care of it.
Yeah.
We saw earlier, just within media, they're tracking people, right? And now AI can determine where your feet are behind a couch and stuff. And it's mundane stuff like that. We're in BIM VDC, but in media, right? We all handle the same issues where we have this software and we got to use this software. And then a lot of times we have to manipulate the software just to do exactly what we want all the time.
Yeah.
And now AI can do that, or people have developed code and stuff like that. But AI is kind of coming over and taking control of that, which I think is fantastic. It's also extremely scary.
Yeah. Again, do it in a controlled method. If you just threw machine learning and AI at everything, you're probably not going to be that successful. But if you do it with thought involved and you do your due diligence and you do it strategic and you do it intentional, your results will come.
Awesome.
You're at least going to be 70-80% down the road.
Yeah, no, AI is going to play a big part. Okay, let's get into the nitty gritty.
Yep.
You ready? What is your journey? Who is David Whetstone? How did you go from wherever you were, let's say high school, whatever, to what you're doing today here at a booth at AU?
This is going to be funny. And I'm
Let's
going
hear it.
to be dating myself again. So, I came home from high school at 14 years old.
Okay.
My father was a piping designer by trade. And I see this big 386 computer and monitor. And if you remember those days, the monitors were longer than they were wider.
Big
right?
CRTs.
Yeah, and it had a Release 7 AutoCAD book, about 1.5 inches thick next to it with a blue cover. I'll never forget.
Was that the big floppy disk?
It was the big floppy
Okay,
disk.
a
couple of them.
So that everyone knows how far we're dating back. Yeah,
Thanks,
I
Alex.
got you,
Yep.
pumpkin. Yeah.
So DOS based. I remember, CD Windows and WIN enter.
Yep.
So that's how I started. And honestly, my dad said to me, I was already artistic. I was an airbrusher. I was, an artist to some extent. And he said, if you can learn how to draw on this, I can give you a job.
Yeah.
14, 15 years old. And $10 an hour sounds like a lot, right? So I was a big Chicago Bulls fan, Michael Jordan fan back in those days.
I got you, brother. Here.
So first thing I used AutoCAD to draw up was actually the Bulls logo. But it taught me, align, trim, fillet, mirror, all the basic commands that we use. And then within a week and a half, I'm doing electrical loop diagrams. I'm updating flow diagrams. I'm updating PNIDs.
And you're 14.
I'm 14.
Okay.
14.
All right, you're in it.
Yeah, and I took that and I co-opted in high school at Sunoco in the refinery local to where I went to high school. I did that, went into Pico, went into a bunch of different things, got into the vertical trades about, 15, 20 years ago, and really gravitated to the 3D spatial space coordination aspect of it.
Well, let's talk about that. So you're 14, you're doing Bulls logos and wiring diagrams. What was that first job that you got that you were drafting? That you actually got paid to do it?
Electrical. I was updating electrical loop diagrams and PNID revisions.
Okay.
Basically, when the engineers are doing their proof of concept before they start modeling out the systems, it's just a flow diagram. Shows a pump, shows a tank, shows what this is, what that is. And I was just modifying those. And eventually, after you do it so long, you start to understand what those pieces and parts are. and then providing revisions back to the engineer.
Yeah.
This is something that I really feel like is lacking in today's youth that are now coming into this industry, is learning by revisions.
Okay. Yep.
You know, we used to get bled on, so to speak, was the term that we used to use. You know,
Couldn't color it red.
We would have our best product done, and we're looking at it, and we're so proud of it. We might even have the person next to us give it another set of eyes, and they graced it, and then we give it to the engineer, and then we gave it to him black and white, but we get it back, and it's 70% red. You know, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to make this mistake again. So you learn what the engineer is looking for by completing his markups. And then you take a pride that it's not going to be 70% this time. It might be 50%. It might be 30%. And after you work with that engineer so long, you then understand what the engineers need to have on there, what the errors and omissions is including, what concerns do they have from a liability that's associated with their seal.
So what do you see happening today that they're not doing that?
So what we do at Alpha Infinity, a lot of times, you know, we do a lot of prefabrication coordination for contractors, whether it's plumbing contractors, mechanical contractors, electrical, even GCs.
Right.
So, you know, we have these stakeholder meetings, they call them, where we meet with the client side and their field teams and their fab shop teams and their project managers on a weekly basis. And they basically go over, you know, the design intent that we modeled out in fabrication. And then they share little key things. That contractor likes to overpour. So all of the footers are going to be 6 inches bigger than they are. So all of our storm risers have to be 6 inches further out from the column than they typically would. Little things like that. So what we do is when we're on those stakeholder meetings, and it's typically just our BIM lead, our project managers don't even attend. It's the person that's, you know, working the team, point of contact for the client. We'll bring the juniors in, and we'll sit them in the office. And we'll just let them hear the concerns of this contractor, because you're hearing from a person that's probably installed these plumbing systems for 30 years. You know, and then there's a challenge because, you know, plumbing codes are going to change jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So when you're doing plumbing work or mechanical work or sheet metal, electrical, whatever, from coast to coast, it's not, I know the plumbing code. It's, do you know the plumbing code where this project is?
Do you know how to plumb? Period.
Number one.
That's the biggest one. And sorry, I don't mean to cut off, but my experience, right, we hire BIM modelers all the time, right? And then these modelers come in saying, yeah, we do plumbing and stuff, and they can model plumbing. Anyone comes in and say they model plumbing. But you put that guy next to an actual contractor or plumber, and you have him watch, like that's the best education you can give anyone, is putting your BIM guys either in contact or directly in the field. I was working on the modular factory. That's what we did. I was like, you're going to spend some time out there learning this, and you're going to come back and build it, because that's the way he's going to want it, right? If you draw it any which way, more often than not, they're putting in these tiny fittings that, like, you know, if there's a plumber out there, 11.25-inch fitting. Have you ever used one in your life? No, but they make them for those very, very, very rare occasions. But if you're like a modeler, you're like, yeah, I got all these tools.
It's available to me.
I just put 11.25 in there because that's what fit. Like, no, you got to roll it. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into not just plumbing modeling, but. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I have a little rant going on.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. We hire for integrity and initiative. Number one, those things are hands down. You have to have those, because that takes away 90% of your problems. But we also gravitate to BIM modelers that have that trade installation experience. You know, maybe they went down the journeyman path. They went down the apprentice path. They've installed sheet metal. They've installed the conduit cable trays. They understand how this stuff fits in the field. And we have a small percentage that have never been exposed to that. But we take them out to a site. You know, I'll get clearance from GC friends of mine that allow me to bring juniors onto their site so they can see what fireproofing looks like, they can see what duct wrap looks like. They can see how these traps are down, you know, below everything else. They can see how all the different trades are coordinated before they start backfilling all the other trades that cover that up. So that's kind of how we supplement that lack of field installation knowledge. But it's irreplaceable. I mean, you look at a butterfly on a P&ID. I mean, it's this big, right? It's just a little bow tie, right? But then it has a big 24 on the line. When in reality, in the field, that pipe is going to be the size of a water jug. You know, so they don't understand that because it's just a little bow tie with a 24 next to it.
Exactly.
So just exposing them to that and teaching them that, and then we put a lot of expectation on our senior modelers to pass down that code knowledge and that trade knowledge to our juniors. And it's an iron sharpens iron, because a lot of our juniors, they've been playing PlayStation all their life.
Right.
So they have the computer aptitude and competency that some of the juniors that have been plumbers for 30, 40 years may not be so good at, you know? So together they just, magic kind of happens.
Okay, so you mentioned some few key words there. So I'm going to ask you a serious question. Is BIM a trade? Okay, but you just said they're passing on trade knowledge.
Well, if they're working on plumbing. They're passing on plumbing knowledge.
Why isn't BIM a trade?
Because BIM is actually a process that's defined for a built asset and how it's built.
Okay.
So within that, there are multiple trades, there's multiple workflows associated with each trade.
Right.
However, BIM in its essence is created to manage the building after the fact.
Okay. Oh, we could debate that one.
But a lot of people don't. I mean, we have clients, I'm ashamed to say this, and I'm really working on them. We have clients that coordinate just for the sake of coordinating because it's a contract requirement.
Oh, geez.
And they're 90% there to prefabricate and get that return on it.
But they don't go that extra step.
No, they'll coordinate it, and you know what? They'll give it to a GC or they'll give it to their lead in the field, and he'll say, "Oh, we're not doing this."
Exactly.
And then they stick build the whole job.
God, yeah,
and it's just,
that is.
I cringe because I'm like, we've set you up for success.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all you have to do is this, and we'll even help you do it pro bono. But you know, we need you to take that lead.
Yep.
But I think, you know, I heard a podcast or something recently, and it was saying that the construction industry does not lack technology. A lot of the technology that's being pushed to the construction industry doesn't work.
Okay, so I'd argue to say that it lacks communication. I wouldn't say a lot of it doesn't work. A lot of it doesn't work with each other or the software you're using.
Or the workflows that they're used to.
Yeah, I would say communication. Communication is by far the number one industry issue we have with everything.
Yeah.
Here at AU, like all these guys, these different softwares, there's competing ones out there, but no one talks to each other. Everyone's in their own lane. If there was some kind of group or initiative where we're able to have all these talk to each other, you can use whatever you wanted and follow whatever workflow you need. Right now, you have to adapt to whatever workflow you have in the software.
And data exchange is key.
Yep.
Being able to go from one tool to the next tool to the next tool and not have 20 different file formats where you're losing quality on every transfer.
Right.
But I think now in today's time where we're at, I mean, you can just look around and there's a lot of progressive construction tools available now, more than there's ever been. You know, so if they can get it to that point where they're working in continuity with each other, it's hard to not adopt.
Yep.
You know, because these GCs, they're holding the most liability. They have thin profit margins. They're up against tight schedules. They're impacted by weather. They're impacted by old workflow. I mean, you have all of these challenges that we're trying to help them out of and usher them into doing things different so that they can be more profitable.
Right.
I mean, common knowledge, 25% of a construction project is rework. 25%.
I mean, I'm not, okay.
If you have a $10 million job, by not coordinating prior to installation, you're literally throwing out 25% of that money.
Yeah.
And to hire a really good consultant that can have a value add, that can give you constructability up front, that can give you the RFIs, ball rolling in the first month of review, and not waiting till we trip over it 6 months later, is a big value add. And it helps expedite them into that technology, into that best practice, into utilizing those additional softwares. But I think, you know, across the pond, there's a mandate. If you spend so much money of public funds, you have to be ISO 19650.
Right.
You have to implement BIM. We don't have that over here yet. So it's kind of like, well, we're going to do it the way we've always done it. And I hate that statement because I feel like every day is an opportunity to be better. And we should never default on what worked yesterday, especially when you have a plethora of tools here available to make you better and to make you more profitable.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's great. Okay, so we're going to get back to your journey.
Okay.
We went on a way tangent there, but I'm happy we did. So let's talk about you, your wiring diagrams, your 14, 15.
Yep.
What's the job after that?
Actually, I got into doing civil in the petrochemical industry. I really liked it. It really had an artistic nature to it, especially when you're doing grading and stormwater management, things like that.
Okay.
I got into doing civil for about a year or two. Once I kind of understood the trade and I could do a feasibility study all the way to construction plans, I kind of lost the interest in it. It was kind of like cookie cutter. Every project was unique, but kind of the same.
Yeah.
And then I got into getting back into, 2D construction, commercial spaces, industrial spaces, labs, education facilities, healthcare. And then doing that in a 2D environment, it really exposed the inefficiencies. It really exposed the inefficiencies. So, when they started using, fabrication parts in AutoCAD MEP and things like that, and actually coordinating things prior to.
That was all in civil?
No. This is when I started transferring to the building trades.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I stayed in civil for probably about 1 or 2 years.
Okay.
And then with some of the larger companies, you get grouped in with structural. And structural was never something I really took a passion for. I mean, I can do it. I understand it, but it's not like, oh, I get to do some steel beams today, you know. But, you know, coordinating a space, you know, making sure everything is right. Hospitals, I love hospitals because they're so challenging. You know, you have so many challenges with the hospital where, you know, all the ORs, people don't realize that above those booms in the OR room, there's like 30 diagonal steel supports that just blow through everything that you have to coordinate all around. You can't have VAVs in hospital rooms.
Yep.
But the corridors are still the same width and the interstitial space is still the same height. So now you got to fit all these VAVs in a corridor that have straight length requirements before or after. You have stainless steel ducts, you have humidifiers, you have all these other additional challenges when it comes to the sheet metal in a hospital that you don't have on other projects. So it's that challenge of that, you know, meeting that bar.
So when was when was your aha moment of like, oh, this is BIM, I'll do this forever, this is what I want to do?
When did that happen?
Time where you were just so inspired to just do everything and go forward with efficiencies and stuff like that.
So we were working for a mechanical contractor. This was probably 2002, 3.
Okay.
And this is a very progressive mechanical contractor. They had their own shop. In this case, it was a hospital, actually, in Pennsylvania. And they owned all the trades, which a lot of times they don't. Mm-hmm. You know, there's typically 2 or 3 subs that will own that interstitial trades. In this case, they owned all the trades.
Okay.
It was a seismic requirement. So we actually prefabricated all the interstitial space on 20-foot channel steel. And at the ends of it, connected it with flanges, with just plastic covering.
Wow.
We literally installed about 4 floors of corridors, interstitial space, in one day. Because once they're built in the shop, they're all protected, they're all ready to be flanged up. You're literally putting on a scissor lift, lifting into space, tying off the channel steel, and when you're doing seismic with the channel steel, you don't have to do every trade inside the channel steel rack because it's already C-clamped and supported to it.
Yeah, because it's got, yeah.
So when that happened, and I saw, wow, look at all this labor money they just saved by doing this in a controlled warehouse condition. You know, that was one of the first companies that, you know, in sheet metal, we were always taught, don't use spiral. You know, it's more expensive, unless it's exposed,
right?
And it's pretty. It's going to be painted black or something.
Says it in the architecture, yeah.
This was a company that had a spiral machine. No, we do spiral. If spiral needs to be done, we do spiral. So, and this was back in the early 2000s. So that's really when it really kicked for me. It was like, wow, if this company can have all of this return on the benefit of going about it in a strategic way and prefabricating everything off-site and beginning with the end in mind, and avoiding 80% of their labor costs in the field. Now, I'm not just talking about man hours. Every hour in the field by any construction worker, there's a risk and a liability associated with it.
Right, there's safety.
It's one of the most dangerous professions known to man.
Okay.
So when you can save the hourly rate and put him on another job or in a warehouse building that, opposed to having to take that risk of life and limb on a site, you're not just saving, you know, from an hourly standpoint, you're saving in the big, you know, taking care of the team.
Right.
Aspect of
it.
it.
I remember we did a prefab job. We were doing the siding. So we prefabbed, I modeled all the siding based on a scan.
Right.
We created a list to cut and roll it, right?
Yep.
Well, from that job, they were able to put up all the siding for this 3-story, 5-house townhouse, right? They did it in like a week or 2 weeks, something like that.
Yep.
And the biggest takeaway from that wasn't that how fast they did it. It was how much easier it was to install siding. And the safety involved. Because siding, you're using ladders, right? You got to...
All day.
So when you're doing siding, you go up a ladder, you measure it, you come back down, you cut it, you bring it up, you hope you cut it right. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't, you bring it back down, you cut it, and you put it up, right? Mm-hmm. When it was prefab, he just grabbed it and put it up.
Yep.
So now instead of making, let's say, 2 trips up the ladder, he made 1. Mm-hmm. And not only that saved time, that saves him less time on a ladder. Safety, like... incredible amounts of safety went into prefab just because of the sheer fact he's not climbing a ladder.
Yeah.
You know how many ladder accidents there are in construction?
Oh, yeah.
More than, I don't know the statistics, but
it's high.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that he didn't have to climb that ladder all the time was huge.
Yeah.
And that for me was like, I knew prefab and like I had those aha moments of like, this is amazing. When I learned about the safety aspect of it, that's when I got inspired to be like, oh, okay. Yeah. So what can we do here that reduces risk on site? I spent time on site. And let me tell you, the one time you don't tell the guy to put his gloves on when you're walking past him is that he's going to come back holding his hand like this. Mm-hmm. The one time you don't say anything.
Yep.
Right? So I can't imagine if you were to prefab anything and put it on site and then also have the aspect of like, it's finished, pick it up and install it.
Yeah.
It's not like fab it here, install it here, measure there. Oh, by the way, here's a bunch of people walking by.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, to your point, I mean, and we're just talking about vinyl siding.
Yeah.
Now, this stuff is less than 5 pounds.
Yep.
Even if it's a full 15-foot piece. And going up there, going up the ladder and putting it up. Imagine if it's a 22-inch large bore pipe
Yeah.
that you have to hoist up into position.
Yeah.
You know, and then you find out it doesn't fit because, you know, you knew you had 1/8-inch gaskets all the way down this run, but when you do your torque settings, they're only a 1/16. You multiply that by 20, and now your pipe's 6 inches too short at the end.
Yep.
So when you look at that from a strategic installation standpoint, it just
How
it
much?
saves.
How much money do you think was spent on mess ups or investment of your education? How much money do you think you spent companies? Mess ups.
Meaning learning.
Yeah. Like,
I know I've cost some money.
yeah.
I mean, most of the lessons we learn usually come at a cost.
Yeah.
You know, our brains have this traumatic thing. You know, our memories are always tied to traumatic things.
Oh my God, yeah.
So when you know, it's the bite the nails moment when you realize that you done, you know, did it. You're like,
Oh man, I
let me get ahead of this.
Yep. I remember managing my group, and then someone come in the room, and he sit down. He goes, "I think I messed up." I'm like, "Okay, well, let's talk about it first. Let's see if you messed up." And he goes, "Yeah. So the unit we built like a month ago has the wrong window in it." He didn't find it out till the mirroring unit, the mirrored unit was up, and he realized the windows were off. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "So the window that's installed has to grow." It wasn't like pull it out and make it smaller. He had to cut into it, and it's finished, wrapped. It's about to get shipped to site, modular, right? And so I remember being like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this right now and try to figure out, because that thing is about to go out tomorrow. And so, you know, I would call that my decision. Like that's on me. I can't tell you. They probably spent.
But the beauty
$100,000,
is that all of these companies in my past that have maybe had to pay the cost of that mistake while I learned going through my 20s and 30s. Now those lessons, those pits, those challenges, they're ingrained. Excuse me. They're ingrained. So you're looking for those things.
Right.
We had one project where we're doing the BIM modeling. We get air handlers, you know, cut sheets. We're modeling out the equipment. It was two hung air handlers that are up in the top corners of a gymnasium.
Yep.
And we're looking at this, and I'm like, these are both left-handed units, but they're on opposite sides of the gym. Now, the engineer looked at this, engineer record looked at it, signed off on it. The contractor's project manager looked at it, signed off on it, even purchased it, even had it in logistics coming in lead time.
Yep.
But us, in the final straw of fabricating, was like, hold on, you might want to get ahead of this. And, you know, we've also had situations where, you know, we'll receive an RFP, and we're looking at the RFP, and the RFP is lacking so much information. So we don't want to have to do a proposal 2-3 times. So we're going to ask, you know, inquiring questions to kind of zoom in on the scope, zoom in on understanding, documentation, all of that.
Right.
We've had multiple occasions where, based on the questions that we asked, we end up writing their new RFP.
Oh, that's. I can't tell you how many times I've done drawings and did all the work and had to figure out ductilators and fixtures and some of the engineering stuff, and then hand it back and say, "Hey, is this good? Can we do this?" Instead of like having to put an RFP in and wait and stuff like that.
Yep.
I got that all the time because we couldn't wait.
Yeah.
On a factory line, it's going. There's no stopping, right?
Correct.
And it doesn't matter if you have anything to work on that day or not. It's going to go online.
Yep.
They're going to work on something, you know. So I can't. So many times I had to put it back out there and say, "Is it good?" And we got the engineer approval. Let's do it. You know, not like we were waiting on stamped drawings or anything. He gave me the email. We're all good to go. Let's build it. You know, so many times. All right. So we're going to sum it up here a little bit. If you were to go and talk about BIM VDC space as a place to, you know, start building a career, what would you say to those high schoolers, to those college students that are looking to get in the space but don't know how to start or have no idea this space exists? Put you on the spot.
No. So actually, I was just having a conversation with a junior here earlier that I just met. I really think it takes initiative. You know, we were at a conference last year, and, you know, they hired university students to be the support for that.
Okay.
One of the university students really impressed me with his ambition. You know, he was hired to be, I don't know what it was, a bartender at the happy hour event or something. And, you know, he went and put up a placard with his resume, showed what his computer or education was at the university. And I believe he ended up getting hired in a job with that. So it's taking that initiative, knowing when you're in front of that audience they can help you. You know, try to understand as much as you can. I would say that to anybody that's working in this space today as support that has no idea what the AC space is. Listen to conversations. You know, pay attention as much as you can. Walk around, look at the booths. Let it pique your interest. Once you get, I mean, I personally like people to have that passion because it's kind of a battery in their back. You know, you don't have to motivate them. They're self-motivated because they're passionate about something. But there's so many opportunities. I mean, you can get into union with apprenticeships. You can get into just doing co-ops at engineering companies while you're still in college working on your FE. If you went the engineering route, I take a lot of people that are right out of trade schools and develop them. You know, we did one where I went down and did a career day, you know, for my son's VOTEC, and at the end of the career day, you know, and it was a mechanical drafting class, and I went to the professor or the teacher at the time, and I was like, who are your two best students? And I hired them, and they were great. You know, and it's just identifying those opportunities, but they have to have the initiative. You have to go out there and get it. And I don't even think that's in our industry. I just think that's life.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I talk to a lot of people that are leaders in the industry, and a lot of the common theme is, pardon my French, well, piss and vinegar. It's a lot of give a damn and go out there and do it. And honestly, probably everyone here in this space today has that in them. Everyone here at AU probably has that in them. But unfortunately, it's not common.
Right.
It's not a common thing. And two things I think you can't teach is passion. And even though there is a class called critical thinking, I don't think you can teach it.
No.
I think people have passion, they have critical thinking as two things that are hard to teach or learn, or you can't teach or learn at all.
I agree.
I used to hire just based off that.
Yeah.
Because if he likes what he's doing and he can think about how to solve problems, he's the perfect asset. So.
Yeah, I tell my teams all the time, you know, it's easy to identify a solution. A lot of times you fall right in, or a problem, you fall right into it. You know, but don't bring that problem to your project manager and says, hey, I just fell in a pile of mud. I want you to say, okay, well, here's the problem I found, and I did some initiative, and we can solve it by A, B, or C.
Right.
That helps you develop as a person, but it also helps the person that's directing you. Because now they have trust in you, they have trust in your communication. They're able to just give you an answer to go off and solve it and agree with your approach without having to drop what they're doing, completely wash their brain of what they're thinking. Okay, what did you say? And then it turns into an hour process where if you have that integrity or that initiative to be problem solving and bring solutions along with the challenge, you can't replace that.
I love that.
And that's the best way to develop.
That's awesome.
You have to be able to step out there and do it.
So how can people out there reach Alpha Infinity?
So reach out, alphainfinity.com. Our 800 number is listed there. You call our 800 number, you're going to get me personally. And that's for now. Eventually, it won't be like that. So take advantage of that opportunity. I like to mentor the youth. I like to give them the opportunities. You know, we'll be hiring a bunch of children out of the New York City School District this year.
Awesome.
To just bring them on and give them exposure because they don't have some of those trade programs in their schools. So we want to expose them to the industry and give people, again, I think exposure. You know, I'm a big beneficiary of that. Like I said, I came home with a computer on my desk at 14, and I kind of had to, you know. I had to dress with a shirt and tie at 15 walking into work because guess what? My dad was sitting right where you were, and he wasn't, you know, those conversations weren't long and nice. So
it was a different time back then.
It was. It was completely. I definitely don't treat my sons like that now. But it's just, you know, again, take the initiative, step out there. You know, don't be shy. You know, if you see people walking around or if you want to give me a call and ask questions, I'll be happy to spend 15, 20 minutes with you. You know, sharing game with you, sharing contacts with you, you know, reaching out, seeing what you're interested in. I know so many people in this industry just from being in it for 30 plus years that, you know, they want to get into architecture, I have an architecture person for you. You want to get into civil, I have somebody for you. You want to get into electrical routing, I have somebody for you. You know, you want to talk to somebody that's working with the union as an apprentice, I have somebody for you.
Awesome.
So it's just connecting those dots. You know, awesome. I call it clapping my hands. You know, I got all these people over here on the left, and then you come on the right.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's just like, you know, here you go.
Yeah.
It's just make an opportunity and then walk away and then to see that flourish and to see them grow and be able to benefit from that contact.
Yeah.
Because most of the people that I know in that industry that I would recommend, they also have a passion for paying it forward. And they want to pass that knowledge on to the future generations. You know, that's
I
what it's
hear
all
you, man.
about. We create them.
Yep.
We have a responsibility to create them.
Awesome. David, I appreciate you coming on today, especially here at AU. If you guys are listening, you like what you're hearing, subscribe, follow, Strive Summit Podcast. Again, shout out TopCon for letting me use their booth. And, yeah, David,
Absolutely.
thanks again. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Again, TopCon, appreciate you sharing.
Awesome.